Okay, so rewinding this thing back, Bryan Harsin hired as Auburn's head coach. Of course, coaching changes all over the place. Now fast forward to getting into the recruiting phase of the job. Also still needing to fill a couple of more positions. Some folks may or may not speculate that Travis Williams, former co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, could fill one of those spots, but that has yet to be seen or determined. Recruiting at the offensive line position has just been abysmal, just to say the least, in my opinion, at least for the last few years. You had Calvin Ashley, one of the top recruits in Auburn history, that just didn't pan out. Otherwise, you've had some 92s here and there with Brodarius Ham and some of the other guys, but not any super serious elite offensive linemen compared to the counterparts, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, who seem to make it a huge priority to recruit offensive linemen. Now, we were gloating about recruiting classes under the Gus Malzahn era. Matter of fact, we were gloating pretty hard. We were saying, hey, he always recruited well. Now, there's a difference in well recruiting statistically and well recruiting as far as quality goes. Yeah, you can go out and get you a bunch of skilled players at 0.93%, but then if all of your down linemen, especially on offense, are 87 or below, might get you a 90-something every now and then. Trust me, guys, they've been using this scale, this rating system for quite some time. And it doesn't appear to be going anywhere anytime soon. And usually the numbers pretty don't lie. Because if I remember right, Derek Brown out of Sugar Hill, Georgia, was one of the best defensive tackles in his class. He was a 5-star recruit, first-round draft pick. So the numbers usually, especially when the player develops at the rate of their capability, because if you look at this stuff, it doesn't lie. Like T.D. Moultrie, for example. T.D. Moultrie was recruited. He was a linebacker in high school. And in watching video footage of his high school career, I absolutely don't understand how he didn't play linebacker. Very athletic, very versatile, very nice range as far as tracking guys down at that linebacker position. I think he's going to really thrive well in this particular defense with Derek Mason. Now back to the offensive lineman. Now, a really disturbing story came across where there was an offensive lineman in Columbus, Georgia. And if anybody knows proximity-wise, Columbus, Georgia to Auburn, that's pretty much local. I mean, when I was living in Auburn, I used to commute to Columbus to work. And there were a lot of people who used to commute from Columbus up to, there was this call center up in Auburn, Opelika, called AFNI, where a lot of folks from Columbus actually used to commute to work there. It's employed a lot of folks. Either way, there are a lot of great athletes in the local radius. You talk about Columbus, Georgia. You talk about Valley, Alabama. You talk about Lynette, Alabama. Wetumpka, Prattville, Tuskegee, Union Springs, even out in the woods in Reeltown, South Carolina snagged a defensive back. It was either a defensive back or a tight end from Reeltown. Oregon came and got a cornerback from Lynette, right out of Auburn's backyard. The disturbing part about this is not only is this particular offensive lineman in Auburn's backyard, but it's a position that you desperately need from a talent standpoint. I'm talking about Elijah Pritchett from Columbus High School in Columbus, Georgia. He's listed as a 4-star recruit. He is 226th nationally, 27th in the state, 31 in his position. Now, that means he's actually pretty decent. Usually guys who are 4 stars, they don't develop quite as quickly historically as the 5-star recruit does, but they develop pretty well. Most of your rosters in college football, you even look at some of the higher tier teams that make it to the college football playoff every year, they're stacked in that middle ground between 96 and 93. That's where a firm roster is built. That's where a lot of quality depth is built. Either way, He says that Auburn didn't pay him much attention. Now, mind you, he's in the 2022 class, so that, I mean, I guess that was, a little bit further off, but it just kind of is evidentiary to where, has Auburn been doing this, especially for offensive linemen? Have they just been taken for granted that you can just get somebody to stand there and block or pull or something like that? It is a really asinine ideology. That more priority, more aggressiveness. Okay, so for example, in my organization, when I see something, a skill set that I definitely need, I'm going to be on that thing constantly, because I do believe in the law of attraction. What you put out, the energy you put out, and as you're trying to build an organization, first of all, you got to know what you want. I don't even think Auburn under the Gus Malzahn era really knew what they wanted or had any type of expectation when it came to a unit, because the offensive lines were never a unit. And that's something that you have to have. It's a brand, kind of like the Maroon Goons from Texas A&M. You could tell the Alabama offensive line, they were a unit. Georgia's offensive line were a unit. Oregon, I remember Auburn facing Oregon a couple of years ago in the Advocare Classic. That offensive line made it plain, especially in the first half. They kind of wore out in the second half, but they were a unit. But just think about it. All the Auburn offensive lines, at least since 2017, well, the one in 2017 was pretty good. 2018, 2019, and 2020, just no identity. Now, 2020, they were starting to get something going, but then you start factoring in injuries. Now, this young man says that they're starting to reach out to him now. They're starting to make calls. Even says that Pritchard has a relationship already with Coach Friend from Boise State. He's been recruiting the guy since since Friend was at Tennessee. So there is a relationship there. And that's what a lot of people don't get about recruiting as well, is that relationship piece. And that's something that Coach Harsin and Friend and Derek, and I think Derek Mason is going to be really good at this. In the area, in Alabama, I want to see if Auburn can make the turn as far as recruiting better in Alabama, Georgia, very locally. Because there are a lot of kids that are not getting looks. And I think some of it is out of pure laziness, and some of it is probably just like Gus Malzahn had a really interesting rapport with the fan base. I honestly think he didn't build those relationships with those coaching staffs to where they trusted sending their student athletes to Auburn and they were going to be taken care of. And it showed in the results. Whether that was the case reality-wise or not, it showed in the result. Because by and large, most of the kids that have come to Auburn, you look at Darius Slayton, you look at other players who have come there, and they're, for lack of a better way of putting it, not much better than they were when they got there. I want to see how Smoke Monday progresses. I mean, because he clearly wants to do it. He clearly has the skill set. We'll see how he's developed. See how his physical training goes with the new strength and conditioning coach. See if maybe even Tank Bigsby can get a little bit bigger. Maybe even a little bit faster. Because it's a game of inches. And the real top tier teams, whether it's a business, whether it's sports, they know you got to focus on getting the little things better. How can you add a tenth of a second to your 40 time? How can you add just a little bit more of a burst of speed at the defensive tackle position? How can you put on just a little bit more weight so in the fourth quarter, when those things really start to have to be a factor, can you come through? We're going to see how this staff does, and we're going to follow this recruitment. And also, more urgently, though, in this 2021 class, I think Auburn needs to pick up not only another lineman, maybe out of high school, but they're definitely going to have to roll the junior college route. And with the transfer portal being as as fluid as it is, I think you definitely want to hit the transfer portal in a major way as well. Because just like players are leaving Auburn, they're leaving other schools as well. So they got to be making these phone calls, getting these guys in, getting them ready for spring and, ready for the season opener against Akron. All right, guys. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. Like the video, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.